Good evening, Thunder Wizards. Thank you for coming onto the channel and listening to me talk. I do appreciate, I don't act like it sometimes, but I really do appreciate you guys coming on and participating in this process with me. So today we're going to be talking about the third eight of the Elder Futhark. And I connect this to the realm of spirituality. So there are three eights. We have three selves, which in my ethnic tradition was called Odin, Vili, and Ve, the trinity of the universe. But within the human being, we also have this as well. Odin would be the spiritual center up here. Vili is the navel center, the physical willpower, and Ve is sacred space or spirit, which is the heart center. We talked about Ve last time, which was the second day. So we are talking now about Odin, the third eye center. So this is what people are really interested in. You know, people want to jump directly into the spiritual. I know I did. And I'm not unique, and that's why I spend a lot of time when people ask me questions like, how do I open my third eye and how do I achieve enlightenment? I say really boring things like become a mature person, learn how to be patient, do things one at a time, live in the moment. Because here's what I've learned. Here's what these gray hairs are telling me. You can't rush any of it. I'm sorry. I wish you could. That's what we have drugs for. You want to rush the feeling of feeling enlightened and feeling good, go take drugs. I'm saying that sarcastically. I'm not actually suggesting you do that. I'm saying that sarcastically because it's an illusion. Going to Vegas for some people, not me, but for some people, going to Vegas is a lot of fun. And when you go to Vegas, except nowadays Vegas is also like Disneyland, but when it used to just be Vegas, right? You went to Vegas to gamble and enjoy strippers and prostitutes. These are all things that you throw a lot of money at, and you might get an immediate experience from. But you wake up the next day, and you wonder, what the hell have you done? How many people have gone to Vegas and, woken up married to somebody they didn't know who the hell they were? So if you want something immediate, you can do it, but you're going to have to pay the price. Trying to get something immediately is credit cards is another good example. If you can get a credit card, for a few $1,000s, you can go and buy yourself something really expensive that you've always wanted, but then you're going to have to pay that back with interest. And so spirituality is no different. You want something quick and easy and fast. If such a thing exists on the spiritual realm, it means it's going to come out of your ass in some other way. You're going to have to pay for it. So that's why I say to people when they ask these kinds of questions, what is the best thing to do? What is the most powerful? How can I open my third eye? I say boring things like be a responsible individual, be a mature person, live in maturity, act with maturity, because there is no shortcut. So I'm talking about that because we're talking about the third eight of the runes. And it doesn't make you, by the way, it does not make you any more spiritual because you're doing something spiritual. Let me just once again, hopefully I won't drone on and on about something that bores you, but spirituality in modern society has become a drug. And people use it to escape. They want to escape how they're feeling. You believe that you live in a prison. You believe that the archons up in the ethers are wanting to destroy your life and keep you captive. You're so important to them. This is the thing about this kind of thinking. What you don't understand with this kind of victim mentality is that this is really quite egotistical. This is true for people who believe they're targeted. You believe that a demon is after you or that a spirit has attached itself to you. Next one, I ran into a lot when I was doing psychic readings over the phone. People think that somebody in their neighborhood is doing black magic against them. Maybe they have an idea who it is. Sometimes they don't know, but they're sure somebody's doing black magic against them. Seriously, you are that important. You who have accomplished probably not very much in your life. You're not doing a whole lot. You probably have financial problems and relationship problems. You're not like you're not running the CIA or the richest person. You're somebody that has a lot of real life serious issues in front of you, and you're all of a sudden so important that somebody in your neighborhood is spending all this time thinking about you and doing black magic against you. This is the kind of mentality, this is an extreme example, but this is the kind of mentality that drives people to want to escape in spirituality. So these runes that we're going to be talking about today are not a means of escape from your life. In fact, what will most likely happen is if you work them, you will be forced to deal with all of your unresolved things, all of whatever the self-sabotage and the pain and the trauma of your childhood that brought you to where you are now, that is making you want to escape. You're going to have to look at all that. So let's walk through that while I get off my high horse. And let us walk through that first, since we're looking at the 3/8. Let us take a look at the third 8 in the Elder Futhark, which is the bottom line here. I like these runes. I get a sense of peace just by looking at them. So we start with Tiwaz. Tiwaz is the name for the god Tiw. I venture to say that Tiw may be, in fact, the oldest of the spiritual principles in the Indo-European. Let me put it to you this way. Whenever it was, if we go back far enough in time, we find out when the Indo-European people became the Indo-European people, you will find Tiw, because Tiw is even more ancient than the Indo-European language. Now, bear in mind, when I talk about the genesis of the Indo-European people, I'm talking about beyond 50,000 years ago in Africa. Because the language that I'm speaking now, even though it's English, this language has its genesis in Paleolithic Africa. Sorry. I was looking at I'm trying not to badmouth anybody. I was looking at something yesterday. Somebody had contacted me and given me some information, and I went and looked on their website. And this person went on talking about the Indo-European people and the genesis, and he was parroting back what has been the academic view of the Indo-European people, the origins of the Indo-European people, which has been disproven in so many different ways, every way you can imagine. However, it's still taught, and there are people that still run around with this academic understanding of the origins of the Indo-European people, and people will say, "Oh, they have their origins, some ridiculously, recent period of time, like 4,000 years ago or something, around the Black Sea," and they just leave it right there. And so people will, people want to argue with me about when I talk about where we all came from. They want to know, we came from the Black Sea. And I'm like, okay, so what happened? Did Indo-European people just sort of sprout out of the ground there? No, they came from somewhere. I mean, if you want to say that that's when they became their identity became Indo-European, well, I mean, there's a lot of evidence, proof that goes against that. But even if that's true, it still means they came from something else. It came from something else. But it is clear. If you're not familiar with it, I would recommend that you take a look at what is called the Paleolithic continuity paradigm. People even sometimes will repeat it back to me and they'll call it a theory. It's called a paradigm for a reason. A theory is one person in one field of study comes up with an idea of how he or she thinks something came about. And that is their theory. And then they go to prove that theory. A paradigm is different. The Paleolithic continuity paradigm comes from multiple scientific disciplines: genetics, history, anthropology, archaeology. And what has happened is that people in each one of these disciplines, based on their scientific research, started coming to the same conclusion independently of each other, that the Indo-European language, the Indo-European people, actually have their genesis in Paleolithic Africa. So that means when the first human beings arrived in the Northern Hemisphere, they brought with them this, or at least the origins of this language and of this religion and this culture. And they brought with them Tiw. Tiw means sky, heaven, North Star. So it is right that he should be the first rune. So here we have a rune and a deity. They're the same. We don't see that in, let me just take a look here. Do we see that in any of the other runes where the actual name of the rune is the name of a deity? Let me just see here. Interesting. There are two names in there that I can see that are linked to two entities. First one is Tiwaz, the god Tiw. We know him as Tyr. And the other one is Mannaz, Man, human. Some people will say that Ingwaz is the name for Frey, and it's not. We'll get to that when we get there. Ingunar Frey is not the name of Frey, it is his title. Thurisaj is definitely the rune for Thor, but it actually means thirst, it means giant. And it's the rune for Thor because Thor is the deity who fights the giants. So, Tiwaz. Let's get back to Tiwaz. So, Tiwaz, you've heard me talk about this before if you followed me at all. Tiwaz is not only found in the Indo-European tradition, he's found in other traditions as well. And Tiwaz, again, Tiwaz is the AZ on the end of that name is the nominative case. We don't use cases anymore, which is why we just use the word Tiw. The R in the Norse, a lot of people don't understand this. They throw this, it bothers me when people don't know what they're talking about. Tyr, the R on the end of it is the equivalent of the nominative case if you're not familiar with that. Nominative case ending. It is the Old Norse and the Norse equivalent of that. So like Baldur. His name isn't Baldur. That's in Norse. You know you're talking about him in the nominative when you put the R on the end. His name is Bald. Freyr. The R is nominative. His name is Frey. So when you're looking at Tyr, you're actually looking at the sound T. That's the most modern name that we have for him is T. So Zeus, we talked about this before. Zeus is actually pronounced D-Z-E-U-S, and this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is the vocative case for the god in the ancient Greek tradition, the sky father god, whose name was D. The temple in ancient Greek is called Dion. So here we have the name for him being D or D. And what's interesting about that, I only know of a couple of instances, but what's interesting, what really blew my mind was that I was already aware that in the ancient Chinese shamanic understanding, like way, way, way back, thousands and thousands of years, the Sky Father, who lived in the North Star, was called Di. And it is now used as an epithet to describe a deity. So, for instance, Guan Di means the deity Guan. It has to do with divinity. In fact, the word divine is divinus. Divinus. Divine. Deity. Same thing. So, let's see, what else? The devas in Sanskrit, deva, or devi in the feminine, D, that's still that same root of D. So we're talking about, in the Chinese language is a completely, totally different language family. The Chinese language and the Indo-European language didn't branch off from each other. I personally don't know, but whenever that split happened, it happened tens of thousands of years ago in Africa before anybody left the African continent. And both of these language families are using the same word to describe the Sky Father. In fact, the word Sky Father, it sounds very Native American, right? Which, people want to be Native American, they'll throw around Sky Father and Earth Mother, thinking that they're getting away from the Western tradition by using those words, when in reality, the name Jupiter, which is the Roman version of D, is Du Piter, Sky Father. In the Vedic, it's Dieus Pita, Sky Father. So this whole idea of shamanic understanding of the Sky Father and the Earth Mother, this goes back a long way, and it is the roots of the Indo-European religion. And this is why in other Indo-European traditions, the Sky Father is the king of the gods. Jupiter, Zeus, the one who holds the lightning bolt. Indra is a different kind of scenario, because Indra, if I remember correctly, who is, as you know, the equivalent of Thunar, or Thor, he stole the lightning bolt from his father or defeated his father, and I can't remember exactly, but he got it from Dieus Pita. So even they have an understanding that it is the god Di, who originally is the carrier of the lightning, which means that he is connected to the planet Jupiter, the highest energy, the highest ether. There's a reason why the Tiwaz rune looks like, a T, because it looks like it's pointing up, because it represents the roof of the heavens and the energy that goes up. So Tiu represents the central channel in the body, represents energy going up to the highest realm. So let's talk about what Tiu means. I mentioned this, I think, last time or the time before, but a lot of people very mistakenly will use the Tiu rune to represent victory in battle. They think it's a war rune. There's nothing wrong with using it in that fashion if your motivation is to bring about the highest awareness and you have to go into battle to achieve that, which is representative of what we must do. We must go into battle against our resistance to our own evolution. And so in that case, if you want to call Tiu a god of warfare, you can. But he's not. He is a god of the highest awareness. He is the god of the highest spirituality. And as you know, if you know the Norse mythology, you know that Tiu is the one who is in constant battle with Fenris. He gives up his battle hand. I see this not as something that happened. I see it as something that is continuously going on. He still feels his hand in Fenris's mouth. And he is still wrestling with Fenris. And he is using the power of subtlety, which is the rope. Because you try and put a chain on Fenris, he breaks through it. You put a rope on it, he breaks through it. But you put the rope of subtlety, he can't break through that. The sounds of a cat's paws, the lips of a bird, or I can't remember what the other ones are. These are things that don't exist or seemingly don't exist. It's subtlety, which means that you have to use the most ethereal of the elements, which is ether. You can't use earth. You use earth against Fenris, he can defeat that. You use water against Fenris, he can defeat that. You use fire against Fenris, he can defeat that. Air, he can defeat that. He cannot defeat ether, the highest awareness. He cannot defeat that. And so what this represents is that we must be constantly, vigilantly wrestling with and battling our own unconscious, you want to call it lower nature, which seeks to destroy our highest awareness. Now, Fenris, what is he known for? He's known for his enormous jaws that threaten to swallow the whole universe. And so this means that our appetites, which come from our greed, our fear, you cannot satisfy them. You cannot satiate them. Very similar to Rahu, the Vedic planet for the north node of the moon. He's a floating head, but he has this huge appetite. And every time he eats something, it falls through his neck. And he's never full. He represents our addictions, our appetites that cannot ever be satisfied. And that is what is represented by Fenris's gaping jaws that can, swallow the entire universe. And the only thing that we can do to keep those jaws shut is with our highest awareness, up here at the crown chakra, with the element of spirit, which is ether, which is meditation. Ether has a strong connection to energy work like Qigong. But this is what brings us to our highest awareness. And this is what Tiwaz is about. He's not a god of war. It means if you have to go to war, you go to war with your highest spirituality. So unfortunately, there's a lot of people running around who take some of the things literally, like dying in battle. You know, if you're watching Netflix, I'm enjoying watching The Last Kingdom. It bothers me that they keep referring to hell as Niflheim. It's not. I understand why that mistake is made, but no, there's Helheim and Niflheim. These are two separate places. I forgot what I was saying. So that's Tiwaz, God of highest awareness. So who's next in the realm of spirituality, the runes of spirituality? Which one is next? Berchtano. You see it spelled like this very often, Berkano. But it comes from what sounds like Berchtano. Because if you use runes, Berchtana, what's that next one? Ehwo, Raido, and then Kenaj. Kenaj this is a reason why when you use the letter C, it can be either an S sound or a K sound, because it's actually the CH sound. Bercht, it's K or Cha. And you see this in Italian, where there's a C there, they use a CH sound. But that's what Berchtano, Bercht, which is the birch tree. It means bright. It means bright. And it represents a new beginning. So this new beginning is a goddess as well. And she is a very powerful goddess, a goddess who you treat her with tremendous respect. Perchta. We also know her as Perchta. She's a frightening goddess. And we're coming up on it now very quickly, which is when you get to the winter solstice. Even to this day, in the Alps, people go around in frightening demon head costumes, and the Perchtenlauf. These are the servants of Perchta, and they're going through the village to scare off the negative entities. So that's what these aren't. It's not a worship of negative entities. It's to frighten them off. And the guys go in there with bells, and they go in with drums and all of that. This is to drive away the negativity. It's really to drive away the winter and bring the brightness of the dawn. This is what this is. So we link that up with the rune that just came before it, which is Tiu. So in order to have a new beginning, because she's also the goddess of birth, right? The birch tree, when the ice ages were receding and the ice flows were receding, the first trees to sprout were birch trees. That's one of the reasons why birch is representative of new beginnings. And if you've ever used birch bark as a fire starter, you know that it crackles and pops and it looks like fireworks. It's all different colors. It's red and green and blue and purple, and it's just an amazing, it all makes sense. Birch bark was used for brooms. So witches, when they're riding on broomsticks, they're riding on broomsticks that are made from birch, because the birch bark coming off of it. It means that this power of perchta is what cleanses. And you want that power when you're cleaning your house. You clean your house with the birch bark, you're doing more than just cleaning off the dust. You're energetically cleansing the space. This is all what beginnings is, the cleansing that comes from that. But before we get to that, we have to reach our highest awareness. So this is why working with Perchta was frightening, because new beginnings aren't necessarily a frightening thing. They're only frightening if you have death, if you have stale energy. So when you bring in that multicolored fire of the birch bark, then the negative energy, the stale energy, must be destroyed and transformed. And so when you see Perchtenlauf guys walking around with their frightening masks, it represents that trying to scare away out of us the energy that needs to be transformed. But if you're completely transformed like a little baby, a little baby who just has come into a little infant, then Perchta transforms into this magically beautiful, wonderful, beautiful young nurturing mother. She's not this frightening old hag. The old hag is you, is that which within you which is stale and needs to be transformed. This is Perchtana. Perchtano. I haven't decided how I want to pronounce it yet. Okay, so who's next? Ehwo. The word for horse, at least one of them, in Latin is equus. It sounds just like Ehwo. Same word, same Indo-European language, two dialects of the same Indo-European language, and the pronunciation is almost identical. Similar, in Latin you have quod, and in English you have what. They are spelled totally differently, but you listen to the sound. Quod, what. It's the same word, same language, different dialects, same exact language. Ehwo, the horse rune. You might have heard me share this before. When I lived in Idaho, I lived across the street from people who had a horse corral in their front yard. That's the kind of stuff that went on in Boise, Idaho. Not here in Manhattan Beach. We don't do that. We don't have front yards with horses in them. But in Boise, Idaho, you could live right next door to somebody who had horses in their front yard. And I would go out, and I miss that. One of the things I regret about that whole divorce is I lost my little front yard. Well, little for here would be enormous. I had this front yard, and I had planted a bunch of trees, and I had, my little meditation garden, and I had this. This was in my front yard. I wonder what they did with it. My ex-wife and her new husband. I wonder what they did with this. That was in my front yard before we put down the sod and all the trees and everything. And I used to go out there and I used to do my rituals with my thunder wheel out there. And right across the street was some horses. And I would go out there late at night, and I remember being under the full moon as it's coming in with the pine tree above, and it's coming, the moonlight is filtering down through the pine tree, and I'm doing my rituals, and I'm whatever. And whenever I would talk with Odin, I would whisper underneath my breath, and there's no way those horses could have heard it. And whenever I would talk directly to him, those horses would make some kind of a noise. They would whinny, they would grunt and snort, or they would paw at the ground. And I mean, and I would test it. I would half an hour silence, just whisper under my breath, Odin, every time. It was really kind of spooky. And if you've read Tacitus, if you haven't read him, read him. He, 2,000 years ago, he was the second Roman. What's his name? Caesar talks about the Germanic tribes as well, but Tacitus, was kind of like a missionary for the Romans, and he went and lived among them for a while and wrote down everything he could find out about them. And it's kind of sad that we don't know of this anymore, but he describes this very beautiful spiritual tradition where the priests, there would be groves of trees that were dedicated to the horses. And they would take horses that were without any blemish, white horses. And part of the tradition was you never use them for any service. So you never put any bridles on them or anything on them. They were never tied to anything. They put big corrals out there, and these horses would wander around in this sacred grove of trees. And the priests would go to get information from the gods, and the horses would, either, I don't know what they did, whatever noises the horses were making, whatever they did, the priests would use that to interpret messages coming from Odin, coming from the gods. So Ehwo represents allowing yourself to be directed by the gods. It's the rune of it's a shaman rune, because it means being able to hear the voice of the gods through Ehwo, through the horse. Horses. I experienced this. I've shared this before too, but I remember when I was 15, my girlfriend had she rode horses in competition or whatever, and I don't even know what the heck that's called. But she had a highly trained horse that I would go to visit her, and she and I don't think I've ever ridden a horse. And she said, "Why don't you ride him?" And I said, "There's nothing on him." And she says, "Don't worry." And I got up on the horse, and she said, and there was no bridles or anything. And I said, well, "How do I tell him where to go?" And she says, "Just think." So I would think about which direction I wanted to go, and sure enough, the horse would start walking in that direction. If I changed my mind, the horse would change his direction. And I didn't think I was doing anything. Maybe there was enough just very subtle movements with my body, but the horse had to be listening so intently in that union of horse and rider. So there's a reason why horses were treated with such reverence by the ancient Germanic people. And so to have this, this is where Odin mounts you. You have to be like the horse. So you can't really understand shamanism without understanding the Ehwo rune and chanting the sound, of course, under your breath. So that's the horse rune. What comes after him? Mannaz. Let's go over what I've said many times. Man equals human, male and female. Man equals mind, equals moon, equals meditation. Moon reflects the sun, which is the soul. Moon is the mind. The difference between the mind and the intellect. Most of us, and I venture to say many, maybe I won't say most of you, but perhaps many of you, interact with your world primarily through your intellect. People who want to talk about everything all the time. And, when I give people a hard time on these Q&As, and there are some people that, there are at least a handful of people who come onto the Q&As that I think all they do in their interaction with the Thunder Wizard path is to come onto the Q&As and want to ask intellectual questions. And sometimes I'm wrong, sometimes I misjudge people when they ask these questions, but there's a few that I'm pretty right that that's pretty much all you do. You haven't read my books, you don't do any of the meditations. You come on here, you like to intellectualize. Maybe you had a couple of beers beforehand, maybe you smoked a little weed, and you want to get into the philosophy, and that's the intellect. It's an escape from your emotions when used in that way. Intellect in the right way actually works well with the mind, allows you to intellectually understand. When the intellect is serving the mind, it allows you to verbally understand and communicate infinite concepts. The mind is infinite, and it is a reflective surface, which is why when we talk, if you type in meditation, and you hit the images, on the Google, what'll come up is the moon rising over a placid lake. Because that is what meditation is. It is a reflection. The water represents emotions, and if there's no waves, it means that we, aren't being distracted by our intense emotions. So meditation, and that kind of meditation, is the result. It's not the goal, it's the result. The result of meditation is to have the ability to see deeply into our emotional being and not be distracted by the white caps of the waves, which is the thoughts, air, thoughts. When there's a bunch of air blowing over the ocean, there's all these white caps and you can't see into it. But when there's no wind, you can see down, all the way down, hundreds of feet. This is what meditation is supposed to be, the result of it. And we're talking about the Mannaz rune, which is human beings. This is the highest state of the human being, is to be in this meditative state where we can look deeply into our emotions without being distracted by our thoughts, our intellect, overanalyzing things. This is Mannaz. Okay, what's next? Laguz, what did I just get through talking about? The mind allows us to what? See deeply into emotions, into the water of emotion. I wasn't planning this. I don't have the runes memorized at this moment. I'm literally I mean what I say when I go, let's see what's next. This means that the essence of the runes builds and takes us to the next rune. There's a logical sequence. When you achieve that meditative state of mind, then you experience Laguz, which is water, which is lake, which is the emotions. And this is one thing, if you see Laguz reversed in a divination rune reading, it means the person is in denial, they're pushing their feelings down. What happens when you push your feelings down? They come out someplace else. They find a way out. There are some places like the Badlands of North America where you have or Zion National Park in North America, where you have these canyons and you have these, or just even in the desert plains where you have these big giant things that look like, giant ships coming out of the desert. These were formed right after the Ice Age. So the Great Lakes in the United States, that's a leftover of the Ice Ages. There is a place called the Salton Sea here in the desert of California. In fact, I don't know if it's even around now. I mean, it's been so polluted now, but it used to be this giant, really salty lake. And that salty lake is the last remnants of uh, unbelievable floods that took place in the United States as the result of the melting of the ice caps. So what would happen is that these giant, huge, I don't know, hundreds of feet high, maybe thousands of feet high, ice sheets, as they would start to melt, they wouldn't just melt off, they would create these giant lakes underneath. So you have this big giant, and this is happening now in the ice, the glaciers that are melting all over the world now. This is starting to happen again. What will happen is huge amounts of water will melt, and so these, what looks like a solid piece of ice, will actually just be, a thin piece of ice with a bunch of water, huge amounts of water. And then finally the pressure gets so great that they burst. And so, I don't even know, tons and tons and tons of water comes rushing down with unbelievable force, and they carve through the mountains, these beautiful canyons, Grand Canyon type of thing going on. So this is what happens when you stuff your feelings, when you do not acknowledge your feelings, when you do not face them. Guess what's going to happen? At some point, they're going to find a way out. The longer that you put off looking at your feelings, the more intense that deluge is going to be, and it's going to cause tremendous damage. It's going to scar the landscape. It's going to cause you a lot of difficulty. This is why you got to talk about it. You got to be willing to talk about it. The thing about emotional trauma is, and I've never seen it any other way, myself included, I've never experienced anybody who's had deep emotional trauma, who later on in life, when they have problems, who doesn't always come up with some reason why they can handle it alone. They don't want help. And they'll give reasons. As somebody, I won't mention who it was, she knows who it is, talked last night about that. And I, was talking about something, and I said, you should talk to somebody. Here's how you can have a session with me. And the response was basically, no, I'm going to do it myself. And that's because emotional trauma creates isolation, which is like that giant ice flow underneath it with this huge lake of water that's just waiting to come bursting through. And when you push things down into your unconscious, as in an attempt to save yourself from the pain, and in an attempt, because if you share with other people, you have to feel it. This is why people want to handle their problems by themselves, because if you actually start talking to other people, you have to feel it. So you're trying not to feel it. So you're trying to protect yourself. You don't want to feel it, so you stuff it down. It's like trying not to puke up bad fish. I mean, you eat some bad fish and you start feeling sick, you need to go puke that stuff up. Of course, you don't want to. You try not to. You keep swallowing your puke back down, trying not to throw up. But, eventually it starts coming out of both ends. So get that stuff out. The quicker you get it out, the better it is. You got to talk to somebody about it. And if your understanding of sharing your feelings is that you get shamed for them, that means that you got to change who you communicate with, who you hang out with. So you got to let that stuff out. Anyway, that was just a thought about Laguz. So who's next after Laguz? Ingwaz. So Ingwaz, as I said, is often, I was wrong, there aren't two deities in this third set, there are three at least. So Ingwaz, Ing is the seed sound for Indra, It's the seed sound for Shakti. And it is what Frey has mastered, because his name is Ingunar. Frey. Ingunar means Ing plus Nar, and then his name, Frey. Frey means expansion in the sense of the expansion of life, like procreation. In fact, the word Frey, comes from pra. Modern English, the preposition pro, comes from the same word, to go forward, to go ahead. Procreate, to create ahead. But it means expansion in that way. So Ing is the seed sound for Indra, which is Shakti power. And you can chant that. In fact, before Om, as you know it, before Om was Im, which is pronounced. People in English, we do stupid things with vowels. So that I sound is a long E sound. That M on Om and Im, I put that in there so that you can recognize it, but it's actually pronounced with an NG. Ing. If you chant Ing, you are chanting the seed sound for the thunder god. You are chanting the seed sound for Shakti. And so how is it that Frey is the master of Ing? Because Ing is also the Kundalini. And whenever you see, those ancient little, representations of Frey, he's in full lotus meditating with an erect phallus. Means that he has mastered his sexual energy, which is why we go to him for that. He has mastered it. He's in meditation. He's mastered it. He's in meditation, and he's fully erect, which means that he has total domination over his own sexuality. He's not a slave to it. So he is Ing Nar, the Lord. Nar means first cause or Lord. So Ing is not his name, although if you chant that, obviously you will get connection to Frey. But Ing is the runic pronunciation of what would have been, if I use English, spelling, would have been ink, which means spiritual fire. In Sanskrit, it is Agni. In Latin and in Greek, it is ignis. So we used to have this word. We have it when we one of the last remaining ancient words where we find it in modern English is Inglenook, which means fireplace. Whoops, Inglenook. I didn't say Ingnook. All right, whatever. You got me. Inglenook is the fireplace, because the fireplace is where the family would gather to do their sacred ceremonies, and they would do their sacrifices on the fire and the smoke that went up. To this day, you can still find chimneys with the Ing rune on it. To this day, like if you go to some ancient places in England, you can find really old, like hundreds and hundreds of years old, giant fireplaces with the Ing rune carved in it, because that's where Ing lived. They probably had no idea. It was just, by that point, it was just something you did. You just carved that symbol. They had no idea they were carving runes into their fireplace, but you did that because of that. So this is Ing. So I'm going through all this, and then I'm going to look at it again, and I want to talk about, maybe, if I get a good inspiration, we'll talk about the progression here. So what comes after Ing? Dagaz and Othala. I have seen Othala come before Dagaz, and I sometimes wonder about that there might be something to that. If Dagaz is the last rune or if it's the second to last rune. They both work. But Dagaz is the light of day. You can see this again. These are the things that really blow my mind. Dagaz is the light of day. It's the noontime sun. It's the rays of sun that hit you, and what does that represent? That represents the full expression of the soul, which I interpret, in one word as fun. Spirituality should bring joy, fun, being lost in the moment. When you're having fun, for me, if I'm surfing a wave and I'm on that wave surfing, there's nothing else going on in my mind. I'm fully absorbed in the fun of that moment. You're making love to your partner. Ideally, you're fully absorbed in that moment. You're riding a roller coaster. You're fully absorbed in that moment. It's fun. That's why it's fun. Because you don't have any time to think about the past or the future. You don't have time to worry about anything. That's why when people are worried they can't have sex, because they can't put themselves in the moment and enjoy themselves. So this is Dagaz. And, before we had, glass windows, we had these shutters. People would use wooden shutters. They'd open up the window and it would just be this hole in the side of the house. And then when it was nighttime or cold, they would just close it with these wooden shutters. And you'll still see to this day, I think it's kind of a cool thing to do, but you'll see it in, cabins up in the Alps. You'll see these Dagaz runes, carved into, so that when you close the shutter, even a little light will come through these little Dagaz runes. And again, I don't even think they know why they're doing it. It's just, it's tradition. They may not even know it has a rune connected to it. And then we get to Othala. Othala. Othal means, it's a rune of grounding, and it's where all of the runes come together. All of the essence of the runes come together into one. This is, again, something that's used, in my opinion, improperly to represent somebody's racial background. Because it represents the home, the homeland, and it represents inheritance. And so people want to connect that. If they've got a racial bias, they'll connect it to that. But it means the land. The land, absorbs everything. The earth element contains all of the other elements within it. It absorbs all of the other elements. So there are two elements that if you don't know which element to do the Hul breath, which is the earth. Because in the Hul breath, all of the other elements, earth, air, fire, water, ether, those are all in the earth. And the ether is another one. The ether contains all of the elements, and when you do the ether, you connect to all the elements, but ether releases the elements and earth absorbs them. So if in doubt, do ether, which is Qigong, or do a deep earth meditation. If you don't know which element to balance, the safest thing to do is to do earth. Earth will balance everything. It's the safest one for you. Okay, so as I said yesterday, we were talking, yesterday and the time before, what I'm saying here is that in order to get to the spiritual part, you got to do all the rest of it. So we start with the first state because the first state represents what you have to master on the physical plane. If you're trying to jump to the spiritual runes, and again, there's nothing preventing you from picking whatever rune you want to use. You can pick one out of context. You're not going to get punished for it. I'm just saying, if you really want to understand the runes, you've got to bring into your life this. So if you don't have mastery on the physical level, like if you've got money issues, it's pretty clear that you have not mastered your projection on this physical plane. And so, trying to jump to the spiritual runes in order to fix your problem or escape it, not that you won't get benefit from it, you certainly will. But I would say, let's go back to the beginning. You don't have money? Well, we got to start with the very first rune and learn the lessons that are associated. I mean, stick with one rune until you've got it. You don't have money? Stick with Ehwo until you get some mastery in your life about money. And you will learn about trust, and you will learn about release, you will learn about letting go, you will learn about all of these things. If you've mastered the physical, but psychologically, relationship-wise, you're a nutcase, then instead of jumping to the spiritual runes, maybe it's time to work with the second eight, and which are the most challenging. We talked about that yesterday. The most challenging runes are the psychological runes. That's where all of the bad runes are. They're in that psychological realm because it represents transformation. We get to the spiritual runes and we find the fun ones again, like the one like Dagaz and Ehwo and Ingwaz. Meditating on Ingwaz will really, that's what the Ing rune mudra, that's why I call it the Ing rune mudra, because it really connects you. So again, it's not like you can't do any of these. But if you want to be a fully rounded spiritual person, you cannot deny the physical or the emotional. Nobody likes to deny the physical because we all want to be physically satisfied. We all want money. We all want spirituality. But how many of us listening to me really like to do the work on ourselves on the emotional and psychological level? Which means you have to do it with other people. You can't do it alone. If you're listening to me and you think that you're going to figure out your emotional issues on your own, if you're able to pull that off, my hair is off to you. I can't do it, and I'm supposed to be the teacher here. So if you're able to do it by yourself, then you know something I don't know, and you don't need to be listening to me. If you're listening to me and you're learning stuff from me, and I'm telling you that I can't work through my psychological issues by myself, it's a pretty good bet that you probably can't work through your psychological issues by yourself. We need support groups, and we need mentors, teachers. We need them. We need psychologists and counselors. We need them. That's what the shaman is. You want to be a shaman? You're not going to be able to be a shaman unless you know how to psychologically counsel people. And you can't do that unless you yourself receive psychological counseling from somebody. This is, like I keep saying, brain surgeons cannot perform brain surgery on themselves. They may know everything about the brain and they know exactly what needs to get done, and you may know what operation needs to be done on your brain to fix it, but you're not going to be able to do it. You can't, try and you're going to have a mirror and, under anesthesia, and what if it's in the back of your head? You can't do it. You need somebody to help you. And then we can work on the spiritual level. And we can experience having the highest awareness of Tiw. We can experience the cleansing that comes from the new beginning that we receive. We can experience the power of allowing ourselves to be mounted by the gods and having the gods speak through us in Ehwo. We can experience the peace that comes from reflecting the spirit in our meditative mind with Mannaz. We can experience all of our emotions without having to stuff them down. We can have all of our joy and all of our love and all of our sadness and all of our regret. I'm feeling, in my life, I'm feeling kind of steady in my life. I'm in an unsteady period, as you know. I'm getting ready to maybe sort of live by the seat of my pants, by myself, bouncing around the world for maybe a couple of years. I don't know. But I'm feeling pretty steady. And today I was watching something on Netflix, and the guy comes back from war and gives his wife a hug, and I just blubbered all over the place. I mean, cried all over my sandwich I was eating. This is Laguz. You got to have your feelings. You can't have your feelings if you haven't done the work. Ingwaz. When you have all your feelings, then you can take that energy and create something new with your newly empowered Kundalini. So, Frey, who is the master of the physical realm, who is the master of Kundalini, he's almost at the very end of the rune alphabet. Ingwaz. Dagaz, then you get to have fun. You get to be free in the moment and I wanted to start with this because I was thinking about Odin, and I was thinking about, the spiritual aspect of the runes is a strong connection to Odin, which I guess we can attribute to Othala, since we're coming up, wrapping this up. You want to be like Odin. Odin has nothing. He owns nothing. He died to himself. Physically died. He has nothing. He's completely sacrificed his physical human life in order to have access to the runes. That's why he can go into any of the realms. That's why he is the king of the gods. Because even Tiwaz has his limitation. But Odin has no limitation. But he also has nothing. He's not attached to anything. I see Odin as an incredibly joyful, mercurial God. I don't see him as this dark, boding, one-eyed, old, skinny old man. Not that, I have nothing against him appearing that way, but that's not who he is. He's mischievous, and he is a joker, and he has crazy wisdom. That's why we see him as this god of ferocity, as this god of rage. He's not a god of rage, but he's not attached to anything, which means that you get something like that in your presence, it just starts tearing everything apart inside and around you. You feel like you're being attacked. But all that's happening is that you have this limitlessness coming into your limitation, and it starts, taking it all, destroying it. Not because he's trying to, that's just his essence. You want to be like Odin? Then you got to be willing to have nothing. I guess I'm thinking about this because I'm going towards that. I'm going to get rid of everything that I have. I'm going to have no place that I live. If I'm, in Australia or New Zealand or American Samoa or wherever I end up, over this next however long it's going to be, and I decide I want to come home, guess what? There won't be a home for me to come home to. I won't have a house to when I get off the plane in Los Angeles, I won't have any place to go. I will be without, that's a frightening thought. So I'm thinking a lot about that, and I'm relating it to the third eight of the runes. Okay. All right. So there's my thoughts about that today. Hopefully, I've said some new things you haven't heard before. I am prepared to take some questions. It looks like I don't need to make a big speech about it because you guys have been either you're being very respectful and quiet, or I'm boring the hell out of you. So I'll take a short break, and we'll come back and take any questions that you have. If you have questions, please write the word question and a well thought out question in that. And if I can, I will answer it to the best of my ability. All right, I will talk to you in a second. All right, let's take a look here. By the way, all of this up here, in case you're interested, we have runecertification.thunderwizard.com. That is, if you want to go and see all of my video teachings about runes in one place, that's both public and paid. It has, rune shamanism, rune divination, advanced rune shamanism DVDs. The videos for that, you can go there, and plus some other things. So there's a huge amount of rune information. If you want to learn everything that I've taught about the runes on video, go there. And then if you wish to be certified, you can be showcased on one of the other websites, runereadings.thunderwizard.com. If you go there, you'll see there's right now the first certified rune reader, and you can run your own business off of that. By the way, anybody, whether it's astrology certification or rune certification, if you become certified by me, I give you your own web page. And on that web page, you can then you can just drive people to your web page and create a business, doing astrology or doing runes. And if you have any other links for any other services that you've got, give those to me. I'll put it on there. That's really kind of what you're paying for. The teaching ends up being free. And then what you're really paying for is me to host that for you and to advertise you like I'm doing right now for all of those people on the astrology.thunderwizard.com and runereadings.thunderwizard.com. Okay, so since we're talking about runes, I'll plug that in there. All right, let's take a look and see what kind of questions we have here. So Jedi Black Knight question, can Sanskrit sounds be converted into runic spellings? Didn't you ask me that yesterday, and didn't I say yes? So you're asking me the same question again. Did I not answer it? He says, is there a process you follow to energize them as mantras? Just like the Hula Nama. I mean, the process is just breaking it down into syllables. That's it. Don't overthink it. So I hopefully I answered it this time. Crone Woman Walking has thrown down $2. Thank you. She says she loves Berchtana, connects her to Frau Perchta. She has a strong connection with Frau Perchta. All right, let's see. Not a lot of questions. Katie Albert question. In one of your vids, you said Thurisaz is in the east of the wheel. That's right. I did say that. I'm curious about this, as most medicine wheels thunder is in the west where it originates. What do you mean? What do you mean where it originates? That is an assumption. Who told you? See, here's the thing about medicine wheels, and maybe you know this, Katie, maybe you don't. If you're new to my channel, by the way, welcome. Go to michaelwilliamdenny.com and you will see all of my books. I have a book that is just focused on the thunder wheel, which is the medicine wheel. And I've talked about this numerous times. Even in the first book, I lay out the wheel and I lay out where all of the elements are, not just because it's my opinion. Understand that what I'm teaching you here is a syncretic, shamanic science that comes from multiple traditions, and the only requirement is that these traditions have an unbroken connection into prehistory, meaning they aren't something that was recently developed. And the reason why that's important is because, and I'm going to step on people's toes here, but I don't mean to, but it's just a fact. Western magic, Wicca, Native American shamanism, these are all things that have been created recently. They've been created recently since we have been disconnected from our ancestral teachings. So that's why I don't follow them. That's why I don't teach them, because a lot of them, people are making stuff up as they go. And I've seen this with rune teachers as well. They're making stuff up as they go. They don't really know where it's coming from or why it is the way it is. So in terms of the 5 elements, in terms of thunder, all that kind of stuff, and where it's placed in the wheel, you look at medicine wheels, if we're talking about Native American medicine wheels, you're going to find that they don't agree. You know, you go on one side, it's going to be completely different than another. So when you say thunder originates in the West, according to whom? Who tells you that? So if you read my books and you watch my videos when I talk about it, you'll know what I teach. So that's the other thing I recommend. If you're new to the channel, put some time and effort into watching my videos. You know, go on a desktop and learn how to search within somebody's channel. Not search all of YouTube, but within somebody's channel, within my channel, and type in medicine wheel and see what comes up, and then research it. And then you'll have, you know, I may answer the question for you. So everybody's welcome, and everybody has to be new, and I'm glad you are, but all of these things have been answered. So, you know, the thunder is in the East, and it's always been in the East. In the Taoist tradition, which is the ancient Chinese tradition, they place the thunder in the East. In the Norse tradition, the giants are in the East, and Thor, the god of thunder, is always traveling in the East to fight the giants. In the Vedic tradition, the sun rises in the east, and the sun worships the thunder god Indra. So you see this in multiple traditions that have this unbroken connection. Medicine wheels, I have no idea where that comes from. Somebody pulled something out of their ass. I'm almost 95% sure that whatever medicine wheel they're talking about was not something that was taught by a Native American. The majority of Native American shamanism is stuff people are pulling out of their ass. Native Americans go, I don't know what the hell this is. Stick with me, and you will be learning something, even if I don't always mention it and I throw out thunders in the East. You can be sure that I have studied that thoroughly in multiple traditions and physically proven it to myself. I'm not just making it up. It's not just my idea. Okay? So it's different here because you're asking, why is it different here? Well, it makes me want to go, where did you find that? You know, you're looking at something I'm almost certain was created in the past few decades, if not a couple hundred years, and it's something somebody made up because they don't have a connection to their ancient tradition. These are coming from ancient traditions. Having said that, welcome to the channel. Yeah, Jedi Black Knight, I believe I answered it yesterday. So if I didn't, I was sure thinking about it. I'm pretty sure I did. Katie Albert, regarding question. Now again, you're giving me this statement of fact. You have to back it up with something. Usually thunder comes from the West. You mean like wherever you are, physically, where you are, the thunder comes from the West? Where are you that it comes from the West? I don't know that, you know, you're putting a blanket statement out there and you're not telling me why. Is that a tradition? Are you saying it usually comes from the West and these traditions you've worked with? Or that in your physical presence you have found that thunder usually comes from the West? I don't know. I can only tell you what I can tell you from working with the actual 8 directions. I don't know what your lineages are. You say I have teachings from several lineages. What lineages? Are these Native American lineages? Are you actually being taught from Native Americans who themselves have been initiated into their own lineage? Are you talking about some New Age shamanic teaching that is a lineage and this is where they say it comes from? I don't know. I don't know. You know, I'm not against the idea that somebody has a different idea. But when you throw these things out in this blanket statement, it really makes me want to just put you under the microscope and ask you a ton of questions. Because there's a lot of assumptions that you're throwing around that you're not backing it up. I can tell you where I've gotten all of my wisdom from. I can tell you what traditions they come from and where to find them. I don't know who these people are that you're referring to as lineages. They may be there, maybe they're not. I don't know. So let's keep going here. Okay, so I don't know anything about Native American traditions, Katie. So you say you've learned from an Oglala Lakota tradition. Makes me want to ask you, were you initiated by a full-blooded Oglala? Because Oglala Sioux do not run around teaching Westerners their traditions. They just don't. Is this somebody that you've... And look, that's not this case with other traditions. You don't have to jump through all those hoops with a lot of other traditions because they don't have the racial and historical issues that Native Americans have with Westerners, with Europeans. You don't run into that problem. And there's a lot of self-designated Native American teachers who either aren't Native American and or have not been actually initiated and have permission to teach. So you can say that, but how do I know that? Let's see, Cosmo Joe. Question, from what I have understood of your teachings, it is necessary to take control of one's emotions. I have never said that you need to take control of your emotions. I want you to get rid of the word control, Cosmo Joe. This is we keep, Cosmo Joe and I have a history, but, we get along, and I enjoy our little tete-a-tetes here. But, your intellect is, your issue is control. This is your issue in a nutshell, my friend. What I have continued to suggest that you do is, in meditation, release the control. And as you know from earlier on, this was what you were most afraid of. When you go into meditation, you'd feel like you were losing control, and it was very frightening for you. This is what you need. Your intellect is preventing you from experiencing your emotions. So let me finish your question before I dig myself into a hole here. From what I have understood from your teachings, it is necessary to take control of one's emotions to unite the selves and manifest. So I don't think I use that term. Control your emotions. I don't think I've ever said that. If I have, I would need to know the context. In the context, I'm almost certain that what I was saying was allowing yourself to have all of your emotions, process them, experience them, not control them. Control one's emotions to unite the selves and manifest. How does one do that if they are buried outside of dreams? How does one do that if they, meaning the emotions, that your emotions are buried outside of dreams? Just the picture that I get from you saying that, I get the feeling that you feel separated from your emotions, that they're buried outside of you. This is what the intellect does. The intellect is a fortress. It tries to protect us. This is why very intellectual people talk about people with irrational emotions, because to them emotions are these irrational things. And so they want to create this distance. So just in the language that you use, it gives me this feeling. You want to control your emotions. You find your emotions outside of you, outside of dreams. Dreams are created by your emotions. If you have a dream about drowning in water, it's because there's you're overwhelmed by emotions. Your emotions are what dreams are trying to process. Nightmares, dreams. So again, if I think you're projecting onto me your experience, and I'm working really hard with you to try and get you to release, to have all of your feelings without controlling them. What I do say is that you have all of your feelings, positive and negative, and then have the consciousness to take creative action. What's the ironic part of that is people who try and separate from their emotions and try and control their emotions are the ones who are driven by them. They're totally unconscious. Consciously, they think they're making these deliberate decisions when in reality their emotions that are unresolved are making them do whatever they do. This is what drug addiction is all about. Alcohol addiction is about unresolved emotional issues that people are trying to separate from, and then they end up doing, the worst possible things you can imagine. And they don't want to. They deliberately don't want to, as they're picking up the alcohol or the crack pipe or whatever it is, and I don't want to do. You're being driven by your emotions. So I'm saying the exact opposite, my friend. Let's see here. See, Katie Albert wants to argue with me. I don't know what she's referring to. Nope, actually that isn't true. But if join, it comes from anyway. So yeah, I'm not interested in arguing with you. You do have a choice. What I am teaching is coming from multiple traditions, ancient multiple traditions. I don't know what you mean about isn't true. It makes me want to just ask you where you get this Oglala Sioux information from. Maybe you are training from a real full-blooded Oglala Sioux who has been initiated and wants to teach you. My experience, and I have very little experience, that's the majority of that stuff out there is not coming from them. Having said that, it may very well be that they teach that thunder comes from the west. Well, then we have to take into account where they are and what are the weather patterns. Does that mean that the clouds and the rain are coming from the west all the time? A kind of blanket statement. Having said that, I don't know enough about it. But yes, if you want to train with me, just like when you go train in martial arts and you're a master of Shotokan karate and you want to train in Wing Chun Kung Fu and you walk into the Wing Chun master's place and you want to teach him about, oh, that's similar to the Shotokan, he's going to say, listen, if you want to train with me, you got to forget everything you think you know. So if you want to learn from me, I recommend that you put everything that you think you've learned aside, learn what I have to teach, and then if it works for you, do it. And then after you've gotten a level of mastery of it, then pick up the other stuff and compare it like I've done and see where they intersect, and then you'll have an even more powerful thing. One of the things a teacher does that I want to do, I want you to be better at this than I am. I want you to master this. A true teacher wants their students to master even what I have more than me. But first what you got to do is you got to learn where I'm coming from. So welcome. I hope that that works for you. Let's see, Black Earth Productions question. Can you share a bit of insight into the deeper meaning of the rune Tiwaz? Well, I have talked about that before, and I have it in one of my books. I can't remember which one it is, where I go into Tiu and his, wrestling with Fenris. And at some point, I can't remember what it is, there's like a sword that goes up through his mouth and out his head, and then the water that comes out of Fenris's mouth becomes the river of the Vanir and all that kind of stuff. So then there's some really deep stuff in there about... See, here's the thing about Fenris. Fenris is, as I said last time, Fenris was embraced in Asgard. They liked him. The gods liked Fenris at first. He was a cute wolf puppy, and they like power. And I'm sure they would have loved to have had a wolf, big wolf, to hang out with and to have be part of their crew. He got too big for them to handle, and they couldn't feed him anymore, and he was going to consume the whole universe. So it wasn't that they had any prejudice against him. They needed to deal with this problem that was arising. And so this is how Tiu ended up sticking his hand in his mouth so that the other gods could bind him with the rope of subtlety. But it doesn't mean that our Fenris within us, our lower nature, our appetites, It doesn't mean that we turn it off or deny it. It means that we allow it to be channeled through the spiritual power of subtlety, the ether element, highest meditation. This is why I recommend Qigong, as I said. This is what meditation is all about. The point of meditation is to have that subtle, if there is such a thing as control, Cosmo Joe, it is a subtle control. And the thing about controlling the powers of the universe is that in order to control it, you first have to surrender to it, which again is symbolized by Tiw sticking his hand into Fenris's mouth. He's surrendering, he's giving away his power. He's surrendering his power to Fenris, and at the same time, that act of sacrifice, and Fenris is very clear. He says, I'm not going to let you bind me with that rope because I don't understand that rope of subtlety. They don't call it that. That's my word. I don't understand that, and I don't trust it, and I don't trust you. It's interesting. I mean, he's seen as this horrible guy, but he was straight with everybody. He's like, man, I can tell that somebody has something up here, and you guys are trying to pull a fast one on me, and I'm not letting you put that rope on me unless one of you is willing to put your hand in my mouth. In which case, yeah, if you're willing to lose your hand, then I'll take a risk. He didn't understand that Tiw was, in this case, a warrior, was willing to lose his hand for the sake of the rest of the universe. But it means that through subtlety and through spiritual practice, that immense power that Fenris is, that immense power, is able to be channeled and used. You have to have your dark side. You have to have it. You have to have it. In terms of having children, if you want to have kids, you've got to be willing to let yourself get lost in lust. You've got to be willing to be completely, totally selfish in that moment. And this is the great thing about lovemaking, is that when both partners are both wrapped up in their own selfishness, the more selfish you become, the more pleasure you give to your partner. That's when, it's working really well. When, you got that cooperative thing. So, in order to become successful at this, this is my living. In order for me to be successful at it, I have to be a shameless self-promoter. And to be a spiritual teacher, the immature reaction of people who have daddy and mommy issues, by the way, that's what that's all about. People who want to criticize spiritual teachers for charging money for their time and their knowledge. I have to be shameless about, here, go to this here, go to him and pay me X amount of money for this and pay me X amount of money for that. In order for me to be able to do what I'm doing now, teach for free for hours at a time and do it on a regular basis. In order to do that, I got to pay the bills. So I have to be a shameless self-promoter. You can call it greed if you want. I have no problem with that. Because, that is that part of Fenris you got to allow to flow through you. So we have to change our idea of what spirituality is. Spirituality is not that we deny the so-called negative things or the dark things. It means that we learn how to access them and channel them and use them. So that's the thoughts that are coming to me now about that. So let's see here. Okay. John Burnham, question. Have you heard of Tiwaz reversed acting as the center of the medicine wheel? My ancestors taught me that it acts as the center or start point from ancient tradition in the directions. I haven't heard that. So again, John Burnham, you very rarely ask me a question because you want to learn something from me. You use questions so that you can come on here and share your opinion. I have nothing against what you're sharing. Do that on your channel. Seriously. It makes me want to ask you, have you read my books? Do you do the teachings that I teach? Are you one of those guys that come on here and just wants to get into an intellectual discussion and show us all everything that you've learned? I've not got nothing against what you're teaching. I don't understand it. I haven't heard of it. Teach that on your channel. Write a book about it. If you have a question for me, it's because there's some knowledge that I have that you need that you don't know. Okay? Again, asking me about other teachers, it's disrespectful to the other teachers, because then I might, what if I badmouth this without knowing anything about it? That's why I'm not, because I don't know anything about it, so I can't have an opinion. So you're kind of tempting me into a situation I might badmouth a teaching I don't know anything about. That's disrespectful to the other teachers. It's disrespectful to me because you're not asking me about what I teach. Bring me a question from something that I've said and go, Mike, you said this and this and this. Can you explain that to me? Or, if you honestly just don't have any idea about something and you ask me a question about it. This is just you promoting yourself and what you know. And you want to show everybody how much you know. Your motives might be good, but the unconscious message in your questions that I see, and this is teaching, I'm doing this for everybody. The unconscious message in your questions is, hey, look at me, I'm a frustrated teacher. I have this really cool knowledge. Hey, have you ever heard of this really cool thing that I learned from somebody else? That you didn't know about that, did you, Mike? That's the unconscious message. That's why your questions always annoy me, because they're not honest. If you're honest with yourself, you're going to go, you know what, John Burnham, I have some really good knowledge. I want to start writing books. I want to start teaching. I want to start my own. Then you're being honest with it. You're not being honest with yourself, John. Go teach this stuff. Don't take up my time. And everybody's rolling their eyes going, there he goes again, talking about, why don't I just delete it and go on? Okay, that's my suggestion to you. All right. Black Earth Productions, which video is it? Which video is what? I don't remember. I don't remember what book it is. I talk about it in one of my books. I don't remember which one off the top of my head. Here's my books. Maybe this is, I should be more disciplined about it. I don't know. But my books I get this knowledge, put into me in these concentrated chunks, and I can't live with it until I get it out. And then once I barfed it out on the page or on the video, then I just go on with my life and I forget about what I say. Anyway, so I don't see any more questions here. Let us take a short break and come back. We've been on here for a while. If there are any more questions, I'll take them. If not, then we'll call it a weekend. All right, so I'll be right back. Well, should I do that? No, I won't do that. Let's do this instead. All right, back in a couple minutes. All right, we're back. So let's see. I don't think we have any more questions here. John Burnham says, "Dirty feet heard." Uh, I acknowledge that. He's referring to, I believe he's referring to a story that I told from a book that I read. This is important stuff to know, what I'm going to share with you. A long time ago, I forget the guy's name. Anyway, he was a psychologist, and he wrote self-help books, and I believe he's passed away. And this was way back in the 80s, and I read this. And this guy was at a Buddhist monastery, a Zen Buddhist monastery. It's very Japanese, what I'm going to share with you. A Zen Buddhist monastery, and he was walking around with the head monk or something like that. And he was full of himself, and he was talking about this and what he saw and what he felt. And he was just, in the moment, he was really excited, and he really wanted to show the guy how much he knew and blah, blah. And as he's going off and, blathering around about all this great this and that and really happy, the Zen monk steps in front of him and slaps him across the face so hard that it splits his lip and says, "Stop walking around in my head with your dirty feet." Now, again, that's one of the. I'm not saying to go around slapping people in the face when they do this. That was, the Satori method of enlightenment in the Japanese tradition. They'll do that when somebody's on the verge of an awakening. The teacher will slap you across the face really hard, and to shock you out of it and to see. And it works for them in that tradition. I'm not saying to go do that. So that's what he means by that. I was told, I remember once when I actually didn't end up meeting him, or somebody was sharing a story. Having to do with, I think I was trying to get connected to the headmaster, the founder of the Taoist sect that I was in. And somebody told me, he said, here are some things to do, and he gave me a list of things that you had to do in order to get him to, because the thing about Chinese teachers is that if you break some kind of rule of respect, they just turn around and walk away from you. They pretend you're not even there. And it can be, really challenging if you're not part of that culture. Westerners aren't. They do this kind of thing, where they come in and they start, And one of the things I was told never to do was to go to the teacher and say, "Other schools teach this. What do you think about that?" Now, at the time it was told to me, I just said, okay, this is just part of their cultural rules. Now that I've been teaching for a while, I totally get it. And when I tell you that acting this way is disrespectful, I'm not doing it to shame you. I'm doing it to help you understand. And as I was saying to somebody earlier, somebody asked me very kindly and very politely, asked me, it was either last night or the night before, said, "What should I call you? Should I call you teacher or master or whatever?" And I acknowledged, I said, that number one, I've never asked anybody to use any kind of word for me like that, but people have. And I take that as a sign that I'm doing my job, because what they're really responding to is, if I'm doing my job, then there's knowledge coming through me from higher beings. Those are the beings that you're addressing. When you ask me a question, you're addressing them. And so when you talk to your teacher with respect, it puts you in a state of wanting to connect. Now, it's getting to the point now where, I'm blocking people from the channel. If people want to just fight with me, I just block them off the channel. And, I have a little button right here I can click, and boom, you don't get to interact with me anymore. You can watch the videos, but you don't get to interact. And I can do it like, put you on a timeout, or I can just say, this person can never comment on the videos again, click. And that's what that's about. If you have an issue with me, which is fine, and you don't like me for whatever reason, which is fine, then acting on that and being disrespectful to me already just blocks you from whatever might come through me, which means that I'm the wrong teacher for you. I've said that before to people. You might want to ask if I'm the right teacher for you. And personally, it is annoying, and personally, it does get offensive. But that's really not what that's about. It's that the my guides, and I don't know how other people's guides are, but my guides are really big on that. They're really big on respect. I had such a problem charging for teachings when I first started teaching. When I was in my late 20s and early 30s, and I had such a hard time. I felt so guilty teaching, and if I did charge, it would be far less than what I deserved or needed or was warranted in the situation. It was those guides that made it clear to me, that they basically just said to me, if you're going to teach, you have to charge, and you have to charge a lot. For me, charging $100 an hour for a session is a lot, or 198 for a session, that's a lot. So I'm charging what I can tolerate. I should be charging more for a lot of this stuff. I just personally can't tolerate it. And the more evolved I get, I will start tolerating charging more. I give away so much free stuff on this channel, and so much of these meditations are gold, and I give it away for free. And it's interesting because those are the ones that people don't even recognize, that have no views on the videos. So it's, again, the guides are really clear, and it's about the bottom line is so that the student, meaning you, will benefit the most from the teaching. So this is what the respect is about. And let me point out again, there was somebody, and it happens all the time, somebody wanted to get in my face on the comments about something. And what a horrible person I am for doing whatever it is that I do, or I'm too judgmental, or whatever my problem is. And or there's somebody that had asked a question. It was somebody that had asked a question, and I did what I do. I put them under the microscope because I could feel there were some unresolved unconscious issues. I can't help it. That's just the way I am. That's Jupiter retrograde. It's not to say that I don't have things to evolve on that level, but that's my gift. And they wanted to get into it with me, and they said all kinds of horrible things about me. And my response to them was, you're a teacher. The way that I know that you're a teacher is because you want to criticize and attack me. It means that you're not sharing your gift. So people who want to either passive aggressively, or what was pointed out before, what somebody really wants to do is share their knowledge, but do it, by pretending to ask a question. These are signs that you are a teacher and you are not sharing your gift. And anger is a way that shows you, whether it's passive aggressive anger or outright judgment and criticism, personal attacks on a teacher. These show that you are not fulfilling your gift, and you are angry at yourself. And this comes out by attacking others. And I especially find this with people who, when they want to attack me for charging, if I ask them, I'll find out they're giving their stuff away because they have a shame about money, and they don't understand this, what the guides are all about. And they have a protocol that is set up for the preservation of that knowledge and for your greatest empowerment. And it has to do with respect and sacrifice and discipline and paying. All of these things are part of that. So, if anything I've said resonates with you, I'm also here to create teachers. That's why I'm creating these certifications. My job, I believe my job is to create teachers. I'm not going to be here forever. I'm just sharing my understanding here. This gray on my beard lets me know. I'm just traveling through this land. I'm not going to be here forever. And, when I'm gone, my desire is that what I've shared is something that people can take and then create their own schools and their own teaching with, and that's my hope. I will be happy with that. If people forget about me when I die, but the teachings live on, that will make me happy, I believe. Okay, so it looks like we've got stuff here. So let's see. Lundgren crucifixion question. Can you give me a brief synopsis of celestial, medicine wheel, and thunder qigong? Celestial qigong is, you have to do it to find out. Celestial qigong is a foundational practice. So if you have to choose between them, get celestial qigong. That's the first one that I created or synthesized or channeled, however you want to look at it. And it is the most powerful, which is why I advertise it. It's been the product that I've had the most success with, and the reason why I raised the price on it is because I saw what it was doing. That it wasn't just me creating some cute qigong. That it really was something channeled through me, and I see that now. And what it does for people is really powerful, and I want to respect that. So, medicine wheel qigong is jongs, standing postures. Standing postures which correspond with each of the 9 directions. Very powerful stuff. You can do celestial qigong and medicine wheel qigong together. Like you could do a celestial qigong workout and then do medicine wheel qigong right after that. Be very powerful. You have to close down. You have to meditate and close down afterwards. Otherwise, you'll blow a circuit. But they work very well together. This is really, really powerful stuff. I'm not just saying that to toot my own horn. It really is. And then thunder qigong. Thunder qigong came from a technique that was taught to me in the shamanic martial art. And it has a hand mudra combined with a standing posture, which was used to give fighters what's called the heavy hand, which means that you just barely tap somebody and it feels like a bomb went off inside of them. Now that can't happen unless you have a ton of thunder energy coming through you. So this is what thunder qigong is all about. And then there's a mantra in there and a meditation. And it's not just for martial artists. If you are a martial artist and you do this, and your strikes will become really powerful. But it means that it will fill your body and it will open up your meridians, and it's very, very healing. Here's the thing about Chinese martial artists, where all the qigong, why is there all this qigong associated with kung fu and Chinese martial arts? It's because a lot of people in China, when the kids are born and they have like an illness or they're born weak, the first thing that they do is they send them over to the local village martial artist to teach them the martial qigong. The grandmaster of the spirit fighting was one of those kids. He was a sick kid and he had like scoliosis or something like that. And so from the age of like 3, he was taught from this master. And so this is why now, I won't give you his name, but this is why now he's sought all over the world. He's like seen as the top like martial artist in terms of energetic martial arts in the world, is because he was trained as a little kid all the way up. And he's like untouchable. You can't even touch the guy. So martial qigong, this is what Tai Chi is. In case you don't know, Tai Chi is not this spiritual qigong thing. It is not. It is now. Tai Chi means grand ultimate fist, Tai Chi Chuan. And it was created as an assassin's martial art. And, one of the earliest guys who became public, we don't even know how old it is. But one of the first guys, when he's asked, what do you think of when you're doing your Tai Chi routine? He says, I'm thinking of blood. And he's thinking of death. He's thinking of killing people. But what that tells you is that the qigong that is associated with martial arts is incredibly healing. And that's why Tai Chi now is this thing that you do just for healing, and there's hardly any understanding about what the martial applications are. So thunder qigong is in that vein of power. All right, there you go. I hope I answered your question. So normally, Katie, I don't get into back and forth dialogue, especially when I've said something and you want to defend yourself. And I know it's unfair because I get to do all the talking and you have a keyboard and all that. So I will take a look at it to see if there's a valuable interchange. But if not, yeah, look, if I've said something out of turn or if I've misjudged you or misunderstood you, then you just got to let it go. Because at some point, I'm not going to go into this. She says, I know you only one question here, just like to apologize. Okay, so I didn't read it. So you don't need to apologize. It's okay. My apologies for being as direct and as forceful as I am. That's who I am. I am Jupiter retrograde. I am Mars in the third house. That's one of the reasons I am good at this. So I know you don't mean any disrespect, and I appreciate you saying that. And my apologies if I pushed your buttons. All right, let's move on. Francisco Romano, question. Perthro rune. Is gambling cup? Yes. I'm curious to know if there is a reason. It's depicted sideways, and if the rune Perthro has a connection with Latin languages, meaning I lost. No. Perthro, well, maybe actually before I don't know, maybe there is a connection. The Latin word perder, to lose. And Perthro. Maybe that hadn't even entered my mind. Thank you for that. Now I'm going to want to look that up. Maybe that is what when you gamble, you're going to lose. I mean, people go to Vegas thinking they're going to win big, but all of those casinos wouldn't be there if there wasn't money to be made off the idiots wanting to make off of somebody's greed. That's a good. Thank you for that. That's a good. I'll take a look at that. Fair and fierce, please write the word question so I know you're asking a question. Otherwise, I may miss it. Would it be possible to ascend to other dimension with your conscious mind? I don't understand your question. Are you consciously able to ascend to other dimensions? I'm doing it right now, and so are you probably. Go look at my videos, the Naga Conspiracy. You can go on, hopefully you can go on to YouTube and find my other channel, the Naga Conspiracy. And I'm in the midst of putting together a long series of videos. And I talk about the process that I go through when I do not just these kinds of videos, but when I write and I teach. The highest form, in my belief, of shamanism, and let me define shamanism. Shamanism is, or a shaman is a spiritual practitioner who acts as a channel or a conduit between the spiritual and the human realms. The highest form of shamanism is to be in your conscious mind and be in the other dimensions. I bag on people for the abuse of power plants because they want to have an experience and go to the other dimensions. And like anything else, you abuse it, it's going to end up working against you. It's why, number one, I don't recommend people ever use power plants or hallucinogens. I won't get into that, but also because it's totally unnecessary. That if you do, number one, what I say, which is to be a person who lives with integrity and a person who lives to seek to be a mature individual emotionally, psychologically, relationally, physically, then that is the highest form of spiritual practice. And if you do celestial qigong, which is it's an exercise, but it opens up all of the dopamine and the DMT and all the other stuff that chemicals force you to experience. And then you will have experiences of the other realms. And then what happens is when you come back, it's not like you come down and you're back in your body. You get to keep that ability. And, I did that for many years. And I lived in between the worlds. I literally was barely in my body for years. And it was kind of an uncomfortable thing. And so now I've chosen to pull that back because I want to live in my body. I'm really about experiencing this physical world. I'm really about surfing This is one of the reasons I go to the gym now at age 55, is because I want my body to be healthy and strong so I can surf for decades to come. And I also want to experience. I know that, my time's coming to an end here in a few decades, 2 or 3 decades if I'm lucky. And who knows, what'll happen. I want to experience this physical world as much as I can before I'm done. I watched my partner leave this earth. So it is really, that just woke me up into, you're only here for a limited time. Enjoy it for as long as you can. So I really want to be physically healthy. Getting back to your question, if you do things like Qigong, celestial Qigong, if you do some of these practices, the whole breath and stuff like that I give, you will have the ability to tap into the other realms in your conscious mind without having to have an altered state of mind. Because the other thing, and I'll shut up about this in a second, the other thing about that is that just because you've had an experience, you have had a vision of the other world, or you went to the astral plane, or whatever the hell it is that you think means something spiritually, there is just as much potential for being misled or confused or mistaken or trapped in your own narcissism if you're in another world than there is here. Pick any one of the 9 worlds. You can still be trapped in that with your own narcissism and ridiculousness. That's why escaping the matrix isn't the answer. The answer is waking up within the matrix. Because if you escape the matrix and you go to some other world, you bring your fear and your victim mentality with you, you're going to create the same or worse scenario for yourself. So the short answer to your question is yes. You can ascend to other dimensions with your conscious mind. And that may not be what you were meaning when you asked me that, but that's how I answer that question. Cameron Mack, question, what does the Valknut symbol mean to you? Is it an important symbol for the thunder path? If it is, what is an appropriate way to use it? I got to be honest with you, the Valknut symbol is not something that I've delved too deeply in. I can probably give superficial answers that you can find on the web anywhere. I mean, there's obviously the triune aspect of Odin, Vili, and Ve. But to pretend that I have some deep understanding of that, I think is disrespectful to you, so I won't waste your time with that. It's obviously not an important symbol for the Thunder Wizard path as of yet. I haven't chosen to, I got nothing against it. I love it. I think it's beautiful. But I haven't chose to make it part of the path, but maybe it will someday. What is an appropriate way to use it? In order for me to answer that question, I'd have to know more about it. So you probably, sounds like you have more experience with it than I do. So listen to your own instincts is my suggestion. Okay, the triangle I can talk about. The Valknut has a triangle in it, right? Triangle is, see, this is something that I teach physically. When I'm teaching the spirit fighting, you learn about triangles. You learn about just even this, this, I'm showing you in the wrong way, but it's usually like, as you come down, you create this triangle. And there's a tremendous amount of power in that. So at the very least, it talks about the power of Odin, Vili, and Ve and why it's a trinity. The trinity's everywhere. Odin, Vili, and Ve. Heaven, earth, and man. The 3 ones. Even made up religions like Christianity and Wicca and other things, they, the trinity finds its way in there. Because it's just an undeniable, tremendously powerful force. But in order for me, at this point in my teaching career, in order for me to really give that to you, I would need to teach you some energetic things and you'd feel it. You go, whoa. Let's see what else we got here. Lundgren crucifixion. Question. Once you've uploaded this Q&A video, can you put markers on your videos like in the bio, for instance? The same way you put markers in this. I don't know what you're talking about. What markers are you talking about? But once I've uploaded it, I don't have any. I don't know what I can do with it, to be honest with you. I have no interest in doing what you're asking because that sounds like a lot of work, and I want to work as little as possible. So, and it makes me want to know why you're asking that question. What relevance does that have to anything? Anyway. John Burnham question, would it be wrong to see the Tai Chi Chuan as a symbology of the fist that's inside of Fenris's mouth? I could make connections to that, yeah. The subtlety, that goes into experiencing. What I was going to say, I don't know if I said it because I have so many thoughts in my head at one time, it's hard to get them all out. What I wanted to say earlier was that in order to experience or to have power, I was talking about control. In order to be able to control these forces, you must first surrender to them. So in order for Tiw to defeat Fenris, he must first surrender to him, which is putting his fist in his mouth. Is that what you're asking? Would it be wrong? You're asking me, would it be wrong? Again, I'm hearing you. This is your experience. You need to be teaching John Burnham. Here's my suggestion to you. When you come onto these Q&As, all of the questions that you want to ask me, which really aren't questions, again, this really isn't a question. I was okay with it. This is you. You're hearing me and you're being stimulated with awareness that you want to share. And you're doing it passively through my questions. Every time that you want to write a question, write it down and write down what you see, what you're getting from that. I'm stimulating you. I'm saying such and such and such and such. And it's coming in your mind like, oh, I just realized this and this and this. And this and those other people said that. You should be writing all that down and then going and making a video about it. You're wasting your energy asking me. You're a frustrated teacher, my friend. Get honest with that and stop hiding and go teach. If you're already teaching, it means you need to teach more. Because as of yet, I haven't once heard you ask me a question that was honestly coming from something that you didn't know and you wanted me to help you with. The wisdom in your question is that you saw something that I took off on. What I just did is what you should be doing. Okay? All right. He says, I honestly only asked to connect on our similarities in knowledge. That's what I'm saying. You don't need to talk to me to connect to your similarities in knowledge. That's different. You're not looking at me as a teacher, and I'm okay with that. You're looking at me as a co-equal. That's the wrong word. You're looking at me as, a fellow teacher. You're wanting to be my friend. You're wanting us to hang out and have a couple of beers and to stimulate each other to awareness. That's not what I'm here to do. You don't need to be my friend to go do that. It means that you see yourself in me. So I mean what I say. You should watch this, and to anybody else who has the same experience, and you're frustrated because I've said I only want questions, I don't want you to be my cheerleader. Whenever I say something that stimulates something in you that you see that's going beyond what I'm saying or outside the scope of what I'm saying or that's really cool, write it down and then go make a video or go write a book. Take that energy that I'm stimulating in you and go share it with the rest of the world. Go charge people money. Okay? All right. Cosmo Joe question, does Fenrir calm the hell down? Does Fenrir calm the hell down after you plunge your hand in, or do you have to live in the whirlwind of emotion permanently? So Cosmo Joe, you're again, we're just coming to the same, I appreciate the question. We're just coming to the same issue with you, my friend, which is you're trying so hard to separate yourself from your emotions. And unfortunately, no, you can't. There's no magical exit. The way out is through. Tiw lives in that emotional turmoil, and he is this is a great symbolism. So think about this. The reason why Tiw is the highest awareness, and highest awareness means having the ability to take conscious action. And this is the highest realm of consciousness. But he is in the midst, his fist is in Fenrir's mouth, and Fenrir is nothing but all of that unresolved rage and emotion and desire and appetite, and it must be incredibly, unpleasant, challenging to be Fenris, because he wants to swallow the whole universe. He must be filled with all of that, and he can't do anything about it because he's bound with the rope of subtlety. Tiw represents being in the midst of that, feeling all of it, and being in such high awareness that he isn't stimulated to act on anything other than his highest awareness. And this is what we're trying to get. This is what psychological counseling is all about. This is why I'm constantly telling people to get counseling. Because, if you've got unresolved issues, then there's only two ways out. One is to find your consciousness and be able to be there in it. You're not going to be able to escape it. Or to stuff it down and then take unconscious destructive action. Because Fenris also represents unconscious destructive action, which you cannot avoid. And your desire to separate yourself from your feelings will not give you that ability. Never will you get the control you seek by trying to avoid your emotions. It will never happen. The only way is to have them all. My teacher is a really great example. I've seen him when, I've been talking with him, and I have been not the best student in the world. I have made his life, at least in some of our sessions, I've been very challenging to him. I've been all over the place. I tell you guys that, my students, I'm not going to judge you if you come to me and tell me in session how much you hate me. I'm not going to bother. I'm not going to be upset by that at all, because I've done it. I've sat there and I've looked at him and told him how he doesn't know what he's talking about, and this and that and why blah. And I can see the range of emotion in him sometimes. And I see it wash over him and go through him, and I see him feel it and acknowledge it, and then I see the peace come over him. And then something will come out of his mouth that will just put me in a place that I've never been before. That's one of the reasons he's my teacher. He's not separated from his feelings. He has them. And he shows me. And some of the things that he's gone through in his life, man, I wouldn't want to go through. And he's, done it, and it's had their effects on him, and his ability to just have all of his feelings, sometimes horrific, very challenging feelings, and then to be able to stay. And then the way I see him taking conscious action is when he communicates to me with such constructive healing, and sometimes very direct. Not quite as direct as me. He has been with me. Sometimes he's really raked me over the coals. But, he's my example. That's why he's my teacher. Not because he says everything I need to hear intellectually. He's my example. And I'm sharing with you, when I talk about that, he's in my mind. And I see that. That's how it's done. I want to do what he did. So Cosmo Joe, unfortunately, my friend, that's the only way. And I know, you're going to try and keep, separating yourself from your emotions until you're willing to stop. And I'm happy to keep telling you over and over again, as long as it takes, because I don't judge you for that, because I do it too. Lundgren crucifixion, follow up to my question. I'm getting kind of tired, so I may have to just, after this one, call it a night. Follow up to my question. When you've commented in this chat, you were listing the topic at hand. It will help navigate the video for what rune you are talking about to see the time mark. I don't know what you're talking about, and I'm sorry that I don't know what it is you want from me, that you want me to help you navigate the video. The video is what it is, man. Deal with it. That's it. So no, I'm not going to put any extra time and effort to make things more convenient for you. Nothing wrong with it. I got other things to do. So it is what it is, my friend. All right. Last question. Psych 3 not. Question. Psych 3 not. Or Psych not. I don't know what that is. Question. Have you found the Tao, you mean the Tao? The Tao Te Ching or Tao in runes. Have I found the Tao Te Ching in runes? Don't know what you're asking. That's not anything I teach. Please limit your questions to what I teach. I have no idea what you're talking about. If it exists out there, I don't know, but I've never seen anything like that. And I know nothing about it. So with that, my friends, I'm going to call it a weekend. Thank you so much. Do I have any final thoughts? Buy my stuff. Buy my stuff so I can save money to go surfing in Australia. I am consciously seeking to expand the rune certification program. The more people, by the way, let me give you an example of something. I talked about this practice of unifying the three ones, which is a Taoist technique for achieving immortality. But I found by doing it that it gives me the ability to, and I'll write it down here because do I have it on there? I don't have it on there. I'll write it down here. You can go check it out. I don't talk about it enough. Immortal.thunderwizard.com, I believe, is the website for that. And the reason why I've sort of stopped short on that is because I talked about it, I shared about it, I told people I was going to teach it, and people said, do it, when are you going to teach it, when are you going to do it? So I put out level 1, and I put it at an affordable price, and nothing. So there's levels 2 and level 3, which are going to take you to teachings I've never taught publicly, that will give you power and abilities that I've never taught. But if I don't see the interest, I'm not going to waste my time or your time. So for those of you who are interested in the 3 ones immortality thing, I got to see more people interested in that, and then maybe I'll certify people in that. In terms of the rune certification, I really want to start talking about that more, and so that's why I'm promoting runecertification.thunderwizard.com. I want to teach this method, and then I'll have to, maybe next week I'll come on and do some more rune readings, free rune readings, so you can see what it is. Anyway, don't know what I'm saying. I'm sort of babbling now, so I'm going to shut up. I think somebody popped on with something here at the last minute. Nope. All right, that's it for me. I will see you guys next weekend, if not sooner. Have a good one. first caught my attention about celestial qigong was how incredibly simple and easy to do the moves were. My teachers taught me that the most advanced high-level energy work was always incredibly simple. I have been practicing and teaching celestial qigong for over 25 years, and listen, I could tell you what the benefits have been for me, but why don't I let you hear it from some of my students, average people just like you, who have been practicing this ancient and transformative energy practice that I call celestial qigong.
Hi, my name is Antonia, and I want to start with emphasizing that I'm not being paid for this testimony. I felt the benefits of it after my first session. But what really blown my mind was how powerful this practice is. Was one night when I was really sick, I caught a flu. I couldn't breathe, I was tired, I was fatigued, my bones were hurting. And after I was finished with my clothes down, the sickness was gone. I was no longer feeling tired or sick or fatigued. My bones weren't hurting anymore. I could breathe. I was energized and super happy, and it was like magic. It really was.
Hello, I'm Greg. I wanted to talk about celestial qigong and what it has done for me. And the first time I did it, and I think after about 3 or 4 movements, I remember this look on my face going, whoa, I'm feeling a lot of energy here. Wow, this is amazing. It really helped me to start having visions. I mean, I'm talking about actual visions right behind my closed eyelids. And it's just really amazing what it's done for me.
Hi, I wanted to make a quick video of a testimony of my experiences with celestial qigong, which have been nothing short of miraculous and amazing. It is a peace, a union, the ability to manifest what I want, that I am in true total control of my life.
Hello, my name is Maclovia. I have been practicing celestial qigong for about 6 months because I was having depression. It has connected me to my higher self. My 9-year-old does it with me, and he says every night, "Mom, qigong was good tonight."
Every night, me and my mom do it. It's like a protection spell. Yeah, I just want to thank you. This has really been good for me. Thank you.
What first caught my attention about celestial qigong was how incredibly simple